the club. All right.
All right, welcome to another edition of Point Counterpoint. This is Robert.
I'm Jacob and Sujan.
Okay. This episode is brought to you by Orbis.net, social media fact censorship. And if you like the music, please check out Robert Farrow at Spotify. The album is Fall from the Sky. Well, obviously, we're going to talk about Ukraine this week because we're at DEF CON F and 3. It is pretty serious. And I don't think I've actually been worried about world events this much before. You know, Russia also ready their own nuclear deterrent to the highest readiness level. They, I believe, are breaking off diplomatic relations with Canada and a few other European countries. Belarus, I believe, is now declaring themselves a nuclear state and declaring war on the Ukraine. If anyone remembers the history of World War I, it was a rather minor incident that broke a lot of other countries, that got a lot of other countries involved due to alliances. And I remember my World War I history, and it's kind of scary. You know, I don't know about the rest of you, but I don't think I've been this worried for a while. So what do you guys think? Am I paranoid?
Well, we're getting I mean, it's obviously escalating to a point that we've never seen before from Ukraine and Russia. I mean, obviously we have years of sustained conflict between them, but this is just very different. You know, there's talk of some violations of the Geneva Conventions with like some of the Russian like illegal bombs that have been dropped on Ukraine.
The thermobaric?
Yeah. Yes, the thermobaric and the vacuum bombs. Yeah. So I mean that's I feel like what usually when those lines are crossed, that's a lot of the times when other countries get involved, but I just don't know. I mean, I don't know if there'll be U.S. intervention. I know we're selling a lot of the weapons to Ukraine, as well as a lot of other countries from the EU to, you know, do a proxy selling our arms to them as a way to help them. But it's looking bleak. Sujay, what do you think?
Obviously, it's just you know, there's a lot to process about it. But then I don't know if you guys are gonna agree with me or not, but I'm siding with Russia on this. It might sound a bit too extreme, but I am siding with Putin on this because from what what the research have done and looking at the Minsk agreements that Ukraine was violating on a regular basis since 2014, ever since it was signed, I see the thing is, if Ukraine joined NATO, if you I know I know Jacob is smiling, but the thing is, if Ukraine joined NATO, then the thing is they would have been the NATO troops on the Russian border. So why would Putin want that?
So Jay, can you turn your volume up?
Yeah.
A little bit.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the thing is, if Ukraine joined NATO, then that meant having NATO troops on the Russian border. So why would Putin be okay with that? That's like, you know, having Russian tanks on the Mexico border or the Canada border. So
I agree.
Yeah,
I 100% agree. As I understand, the deal was basically we won't expand NATO if they don't invade any countries and try to take them back. And we did expand NATO. Now, I'm not here to say one country is right over the other. I just don't want to fight in it.
Absolutely.
You know, there's a nuclear power. Who was it? Adam Kissing Jerkoff was basically saying that we should do, or was it Liz? I don't remember. One of them was saying that basically we should do a cyber attack and stuff like that. Cyber attack is considered an act of war. I mean, we should not be playing games of another nuclear power. You know, I fully support whoever attacks us, we should whip the hell out of them. But this, I don't think it's our fight, and I'm not saying Russia's right, because Russia is doing, Russia, if they're dropping thermobaric bombs, they're committing war crimes against civilians. But on the other hand, we did break an agreement.
Yes.
I think they also broke an agreement too, because I think they invaded Georgia and then they invaded Odessa, but we did too. I don't know. I just don't, again, my biggest thing is I don't think we should do ground troops, and we should not get involved militarily. We don't need another Cuban Missile Crisis, because we're lucky that didn't turn out hot. We're very lucky that didn't turn out hot.
I mean, I just don't understand. I mean, like, yes, I mean, they even if they did violate some treaty, I don't think anything advocates for the bombing of civilians and like the taking of their capital. I mean, it's pretty barbaric. It's pretty messed up.
Yeah.
Like Vladimir Putin is killing a lot of people, to do this, and that's just not, like that's not something that I can ever condone. Really,
Yeah, Jacob, but one thing, see,
like civilians.
we all agree that what's happening with the civilians is wrong, but then you've also got to remember that when the Minsk agreements happened, that meant that there had to be peace with regards to the Donbass region, right? So since 2014, the people of the people of the Donbass region, they were going to the Ukrainian government to declare them an independent state. And the Ukrainian government was just not willing to do that, and there was constant shelling, which resulted in 15,000 deaths since 2015. So, see, we all agree that Vladimir Putin is a dictator. We all agree that he's an evil man who just wants to, bring back the USSR. The same time, the Ukrainian government they're no good either. I'm seeing, if you open the internet right now, there's fawning over Zelensky and saying that, oh, look at him, he's such a brave man. All those photos are from 2019. They're not even from right now.
Yeah, I have seen that. That
Exactly.
some of the photos might be
Exactly. Yeah.
Might be
was
old
from a trip.
photos. I've seen that.
That was a trip to the Ukrainian-Russian border in 2019. And Zelensky is not. He's not a good man. Like his jail is opposition. He's jailed. The people who are running the news stations that are covering his policies and criticizing him. So I don't get it. Like people are just too gullible to do their own research. That's the sad part.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I think it's entirely possible where I think, that there's no happy, correct, rainbow, beautiful side here. I mean, I think there's a little bit of guilt in everyone. I think, Putin's not justified for what he's doing. The Ukraine might be corrupt. They might be playing us some propaganda pictures from 10 years ago, try to change public opinion, though every single war does that. What's the old adage? The first victim in a war is the truth. And maybe we did expand NATO like we should have. I don't know if anyone's like really the good side here. I just don't want innocent civilians get killed, and I especially don't want our country involved.
Absolutely, the US shouldn't get involved. Like, but
Turn
then
yourself up some more, CJ. You're still kind of low. Okay. All right. It's when it's a nuclear power, you can't play brinksmanship.
Who are you implying as a nuclear power?
Well, Russia and us. I mean,
yeah.
It's.
But Ukraine is not.
It is not. No,
it is not, and that's due to an agreement from Russia and the United States.
Correct.
So what I don't understand is they made that agreement to the denuclearization.
Yes.
And then they invaded them and took advantage of the treaty that they signed. So the thing is about with America is like normally, like I wouldn't say I'd want to get involved, and it's hard to say get America getting involved in anything can always lead to terrible things happening. But when it comes to humanitarian aid and trying to help them in positive ways and helping them hold out against this literal Russian invasion, I mean, like this, it's pretty nuts. I mean, like we have the biggest military in the world, and like are we really not even gonna do anything about it? Like do you guys recommend like sanctions? Because like the way that you guys are speaking about it is like, Sujay said that he agreed with it. So like, do you not agree with the sanctions that we're putting on Russia? Do you think we're being
Well,
like
my
too hard on
problem
them, or
is,
like?
I think the sanctions are wussy. Russia's biggest export is oil. If you wanted to hurt Russia, you would sit there and cut off the oil. But oh no, Europe is dependent on Russian oil, which by the way, Trump warned Europe about. But we shut off our own pipeline. We green lighted the Russian pipeline, and they can't shut off oil because they don't have enough energy production to supply their own energy needs. That's why we're not doing it. And we
Also,
don't
guys, one
have
more
to
thing.
be in this position.
As
But
one
we
more thing.
are.
Since 2014, apparently Vladimir Putin has been heavily investing in gold. So in some ways, he's made himself sanction proof, because now with inflation and everything, gold is something that's going to skyrocket. And
Yeah.
people are saying that he's made Russia sanction proof.
But it's
Because
our
of all
own
that
fault that we're in this position. It's Europe's fault they're in this position. We shouldn't be. If we wanted to hurt Russia, we could cut off the oil, but oh no, we're dependent. Yeah, I mean, since you asked me the question, I'm in favor of sanctions, and even though I think there's some legitimate reasons for Putin to be angry, I think there's a different way of solving it, and I'm in favor of helping the Ukrainians because they got invaded. So there's lots of ways you could have handled this differently. And so yeah, actually, once again, I think I agree with Jacob. I agree. And actually, I agree with you, CJ, that I see why he's angry, but that's not a justification.
Absolutely not. But we know what kind of a man he is. So there's no point poking the bear. Just go.
Oh.
And also, like when you're going for diplomatic talks, right? You've got that, there'll be a point where you've got to compromise on certain things. Like if you say no, this is not going to happen, then there's no point of having diplomatic talks. Like that's what's been happening.
Well, this could easily spiral out of control, and I hope somebody has some sense and don't push us to the edge, because there's too many warmongers, and there's and usually the people pushing for the war are not the people that's going to send their kids to the battlefield.
Rob, did you see what the president of Brazil said yesterday? He basically said that what's happening in Russia and Ukraine is bad, obviously, but at the end of the day, they're like brothers. So we just have to be diplomatic and let them solve it among themselves rather than get involved, because we all have our own countries to run to, and if we in some ways or the other alienate Russia, it's going to hurt our economies. That's what he said.
Well, I mean, I think I'm in favor, and I think Jacob agrees with me, where I'm in favor of everything except for getting physically military involved. I think I'm in favor of everything else, even supplying them arms. I'm okay with that. And I think that's happening now. A number of countries is supplying the Ukrainians arms.
Well, now Belarus has actually agreed to fight against Ukraine with Russia.
Yeah, they also let in Russian troops through Belarus. So Belarus is always on Russia's side.
Yeah, so it's a
cluster.
I just don't. It's so reminiscent of World War One.
Yep.
It's so reminiscent of World War One.
Lights are going out all in Europe.
Even with Poland, even similar to World War II, like this could very easily extend into Poland. At that point, or do you start to disagree with Putin, or at what point does it become just something that you just?
Jacob, think about this. Okay, in this day of information internet, okay, if Russia really wanted to wage war, they would cut off the internet supply, but they didn't do that. And most of their advanced army is still in Russia. And Putin has always said that his fight is against the government of Ukraine. It's not even against civilians. So if you see, it's been almost 5 days now. he could have easily wiped out the internet and everything by now, which is imperative because obviously, how are you going to connect with the outside world if you've got no internet connection? But people can still connect, people can still talk. So something's not adding up with the narrative that the media is giving us. So yeah, people have got to do their own research and see what the hell's happening.
Well, I do think something's up, but it doesn't it's always dangerous to sit there and make a judgment without knowing all the facts. And you rarely know all the facts. Like I just found out like Musk actually shut up a bunch of Starlinks and gave them to Ukraine so they can have their own internet. I mean, that's actually kind of genius actually. But and you can't say that it's wrong because every single government lies during the war. We did, yeah, they all do. First casualty is truth. I mean, and I don't know. I mean, you get it, the people that pay the price are usually are the civilians, the people that should have the least amount responsible for all the horror they're going through.
And the worst part, Rob, is that because of this war, with no other country from the east somewhere is involved in this. Everyone is going to suffer from this. Everyone who's dependent on Russia. Like for example, here in India, the price are going to go up of oil, then of edible oil, then wheat. It's just so frustrating.
So
And
questions. I honestly don't think Europe is going to be involved because that triggers an Article 5. And I think Putin he's not an idiot. I don't think he wants to fight NATO unless he has no other choice. Because then, the border between a conventional war and a nuclear war is a very thin line. I don't think he's stupid. But he could be crazy. Will this lead to something else? I do think I wouldn't be surprised if China tries to move on Taiwan. Does anyone think it's possible, or do you think
they're already conducting mock military experiments in the South China Sea apparently?
They are. They're conducting exercises right now. One thing that troubles me is everyone's like, well, why now? And people like to blame Biden, but I think it's more than just Biden. And feel free for everyone to disagree, but I do think we've been displaying weakness. I think Afghanistan has a hell of a lot to do with this.
Totally.
I think our own division politically. A lot of people tend to think of the world in their own terms, and they don't think how the enemy might view something. And I think our present, and this might offend a few people, but I think our present push towards diversity in the military, how it's being presented, makes us look weak. And again, that's, I understand everyone thinks a certain way in the United States, but you have to think how your enemy thinks. You have to get in their head. And unless you understand how they're thinking, you're going to get taken advantage of and you're going to get surprised. And they, Russia, China, they think, the thing that they fear is what we consider toxic masculinity. Might makes right. Mao Tse-tung, political power comes from the barrel of a gun. That's what they understand. And I think our push to them looks like weakness. And I think go ahead.
I mean, diversity being a weakness, like that's the weakness that's being displayed.
Let me give you an example.
Really,
Yes.
Okay.
I think Rob is
Like
referring to all
I want to ask you a question.
stuff that is happening. Yeah.
China went and formed an alliance with the Stonewall Brigade. At the exact same time, China also banned what they considered feminine men on TV. This was the same week. Those two things are diametrically opposed to each other. Why would China do that?
Yeah, because
They just
Sorry,
don't have like transgender rights in China. They just don't have
care
like
about
freedom
those
of like. Well, I mean, it's just. I mean, I think that everyone should have a right to express themselves however they want.
I didn't say that. I'm saying, how do our enemies perceive that?
Weakness.
Like what? Like that's like the most confusing take. Like
Okay, do it for example. Wait. I think what Rob's telling is that if-
why do you think like diversity like would make like
I'll give you
a country like less scared of us? Like because we like enlist like gay people in the military?
so
Like that somehow makes us less like intimidating or
China,
something?
if you take a look at the military recruiting ads of the three countries, take a look at China's recruiting ads, you know, a bunch of Chinese tough men, muscles sitting there, you know, running through the obstacle course. Exact same thing with America. I mean, with Russia. America is talking about a girl and with her gay parents and how happy she is that the America is diverse. Does that intimidate our enemies? Does that make our enemies scared to face us?
sign of weakness.
Dude, I mean, like, I don't feel like they're watching our commercials to
Yes, they
decide
are.
their
Dude,
military
Yes, they are.
tactics.
They are.
Like
I'm
whether
not talking about how I
like,
feel.
but like the thing is,
see this?
I mean, like,
We're saying toxic masculinity and masculinity is bad and blah blah blah.
yeah, I mean, I think it is pretty bad.
Well, okay, that's
Did-
weakness to them, and this is how. Dude, I think this is actually we're a victim. Oh, do you think masculinity is bad?
I mean, I think there's no like, I mean, it's like half of the like, you know, I mean, not necessarily. I mean, I feel like people can express themselves however they want
Sure,
to.
but understand, I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm saying people always view the world in their own lens and their own personal experiences, and what people fail to do is look how another culture or views us, and sometimes it's completely opposite to the way we see things. I guarantee you they view it as weakness. Guarantee you.
Hmm.
I mean, that's, I
CJ,
mean,
you're
it's,
in a different country. Am I wrong?
No, that's absolutely true, because even we in India, we made fun of all that white trade stuff that Mark Milley was talking about. See, the thing is, dude, when you've got your you know the military head, you know, saying that, you know, he can't understand white rage when there's a war brewing in Afghanistan. What does that tell you? Where does where do his priorities lie? Okay, now don't you think that Russia and China saw all that? Don't you think Russia and China saw that skit with with I don't know, with the gender fluid TikToker going and making calls from the White House? Don't you think they saw that and saw and came to the conclusion that, dude, look at this, they're so weak now. Now that's now that's not a slight on, you know, all the transgender people or the gender fluid people. They have the right to do what they want. But I'm saying that's in the West. In the East, they do not give two shits about that. Have you seen the Russian guys? They're straight up killers. They don't care what you are, what you do. So at the end of the day, what matters is they like United States has got a lot of problems culturally, but then here they just don't care, and that is obviously going to play a part, because at war means force, and you know, by like if you see through nature, you've got to have strong masculine leaders, man. Now I'm not saying that toxic, I'm not saying that, oh, that's toxic masculinity, but then that's just common sense, right?
I think personally, toxic masculinity, what they call it, and that's what like keeps your country from being invaded.
Absolutely.
People respect strength. Our
But,
enemies respect.
I mean, okay, does the thing that I like, why does strength have to come from masculinity? Because like there are a lot of strong,
wars are.
Well,
I mean,
sure.
there's a
was
lot
saying-
of strong women too, though.
But-
I mean, like it, like there's
I
like
didn't say
women are
that.
a huge part of the American
But
military.
it's the
So
left,
why would,
because it's the left that's calling masculinity, traditional masculinity, toxic.
well,
And I'm saying-
toxic masculinity, toxic masculinity,
What? Okay, let's define that. Let's start with definitions.
as in like, you know, not accepting, you know, like not talking about your feelings, or you know, not expressing like, you know, love for people or feelings towards people, you know, or like, you know, like toxic aspects of, you know, like growing up like as a man, like ways that like were harmful to your development because you couldn't talk about things with people. Because that's like toxic masculinity, like fathers that won't talk to their sons about stuff because like men don't talk to men about stuff. Like, or we just hold stuff in, instead of like reaching out and talking to people about it. That's what I'm talking about, like toxic masculinity, or like people that like act a little bit different from you, like say a woman like dress more like traditionally masculine. Like how does that bother you? Or like a man doing the other way, like it
It doesn't necessarily bother me. What I'm saying, our enemies think we're weak and divided. And I can understand, because I mean, from their point of view.
Well, does
Okay,
not
who
including
grew up in Baltimore City?
them.
Did anyone grow up in the city? I grew up in Baltimore City.
Yeah, I grew up in the city.
What?
I grew up in the city as well.
Yeah, I mean, it basically, and maybe I was in the wrong neighborhood, but if I wanted to go around the neighborhoods, I had to learn how to fight, or I would get picked on. I got into like maybe 100, I don't know, 100 fights. But if I wanted to go where I wanted, I had to show I can hit back. I mean,
but do you think like women don't like hit back or anything like that? Like it doesn't.
I'm saying that they're
like, or like you say diversity too, like a focus towards like other races as well.
No, the diversity shouldn't be the main.
America is much more diverse than China.
The main goal of an army is to kill people.
Not necessarily.
Yes,
it's more to protect. I would say
that's how you're gonna win wars, man.
I would say military is more about protecting assets, more about strategically putting troops there to guard things to avoid conflict. Like military, they're supposed to respond to conflict, not instigate it. I mean, like this is just how the world, this is just how it should be.
An aggressor nation is going to sit there and take their time and pick and make a rational decision. If I attack this country, how much will I have to go through? How easy will it be? How hard will it be? And a lot of that is troops. How good are the troops? What is their morale? What's their, and if we're sitting there doing things like, destroying, and I do think traditional roles are under attack. And I think they're the negative to it. Actually, I think it's one, honestly, this is another discussion, but this is why I think half of our society is going to hell right now, because basically the entire social structure is under attack. That's another show. But my point is, at least as far as they see it, destroying the family weakens the culture, makes the country easier to invade.
I mean, it's just like, traditional relationships being under attack is honestly just like it's just not. I just disagree completely because
dude,
can you let me finish first?
Okay.
So I mean, like, how are gay people weren't allowed to be married till like 2008 here, and still aren't in many parts of the world. Like CJ said, they don't give a shit. They don't. So like to imply that like traditional relationships are somehow like suffering more like stigma than non-traditional relationships is like just not. It's just I completely disagree.
I never say
like
gay.
You say. Well, that's what you say. Traditional.
No, that's how you're interpreting it.
Okay. Well,
marriage, lowest rates on record. Kids born in a nuclear family, lowest rates on record. People
that was more.
Relationships, lowest rates on record.
That's I think subject, a lot. But I think because marriage has your last generation failed a lot in marriage. There's been a lot of broken. 50% of American marriages end in divorce. So a lot of people now are a bit more wary about it. But I know a ton of people that are getting married. Like my family is not traditional in any sense. My sister's getting married very soon.
Okay.
So it's just your marriage rights are not being under attack or anything.
No. The traditional system is being under attack, and because of it, people aren't getting married, people aren't having kids. We're below replacement level. So is Europe.
I think it's actually good, honestly, for the population to go down a little bit in like a organic, not killing people type of way, like let people just not having as many kids. There's just so many people in this world. it's very
Okay.
overcrowded,
Come
especially
on,
with
man.
research.
Seriously, you
Engines.
feel that's
I mean,
I
I'm
don't
not.
believe that.
I'm not. I'm not
Okay.
implying that like there should be any restriction on people having kids or
Why did
that, like,
Europe import all these immigrants?
what do you mean import
And
immigrants?
around
Why-
2015, they basically weakened the borders and allowed basically anybody to come to Europe.
Because there was a lot of turmoil in the Middle East, and
No.
there was a lot of refugees that were feeling crises.
When you have a social state, you basically need people to pay into the social state. When you have less people being born lower than the replacement levels, there's consequences. I never hear people talk about, gee, what happens if there's more old people and less young people? Why can't the Europe, really afford a big military until recently? Because they have no choice. It's because of their social program. They can't have these programs and maintain a large military budget, but they also can't sit there and fund all their social programs if they don't have young people paying into it. Thus, they needed to import people. I mean, these things have consequences. I mean, I personally think crime is up through every single city since the 50s because the nuclear family is basically dissolved for most of the poor people in the inner city, Black as well as white. These things, in every single study, people in a nuclear family, the kids, they're less likely to be in trouble. They're more likely to make more money. They're more likely to they do well in every single category. When these things fall apart, they have consequences, and I think our culture is weaker from it. And I think our enemies are think we're weak and are more likely to take advantage of our current situation.
Right.
Rob, with all the not having family, not having kids and everything, all that's going on in the West, guess which two countries are having kids and saying that expand the nuclear family? It's Russia and China.
Yeah. I mean, my point is, if China thought it was a good thing, they would encourage it. I mean, the reason why I asked you the question about Stonewall and the banning of feminine men, I'm not saying it's right, but China obviously views all these things as something that strengthens their economy. And, people like that, people like Mao Tse-tung, might makes right. They understand force. And when I say it's about killing people, I mean that basically they don't want to attack us if they think they're going to die from it. That's what they see. They see force. That's why our pullout from Somalia encouraged bin Laden. It did. I mean, because, they retreated. They're weak. Our enemies, we have a certain culture, we have a certain belief system, but we need to pay attention to how people that aren't us think. These things have consequences. You mentioned one time that, there are certain issues that don't have, everything has a positive and a negative. And if you're not really understanding the negative, I don't think you're really making a good decision. And I really think every single issue has a positive and a negative. And too many people look at it from one side and not the other. And that's where we get ourselves into trouble. And God, I hope this doesn't become nuke.
And Rob, have you noticed one very strange thing from the American left? They're suddenly pro Second Amendment and they're suddenly pro borders.
Oh, I do find that funny. However, something negative, I'm hearing a lot of giving that, I can't remember the Ukrainian guy, giving weapons to everybody. He gave them to some criminals, and now he has very well-armed gangs. So that was a stupid move on his part.
Apparently, they've let out lots of prisoners to help at this war. That just doesn't make sense, man.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a good idea.
I want to say like two things. There are very differing opinions of guns on the left. Yes, there are a lot of different opinions. I would say most people on the left vary more towards gun control, but I think there are very few on the left at this point that completely advocate to take away guns completely. It's just a part of America.
You really think that?
Yes.
Okay.
I actually do. I mean, I think I don't know many people, and I know some real, hippie people, and not many of us, I mean, I definitely think gun control, it should be harder to get a gun. I think less people should have them because I think there's a lot of irresponsible people with them.
There is.
And a lot of irresponsible ways that people carry them, I had a kid that, shot himself on accident, when I was in
Oh.
middle school, because, his parents had, one of them. So, like that's what
okay?
I think, like, he died. No,
Oh.
yeah. So, I mean, it's like there's a lot of problems with having like these really like, like having weapons around the house that aren't safely put away or used in a responsible way. And I
You
also,
had a second point.
what were we talking?
You had a
The
second point.
borders, the borders. Yeah. So I would say actually not many people on the left have altered that stance. The borders, I actually think most people on the left are in favor of Ukrainian refugees or refugees from other countries are welcome here. I would say that that's a big part of, the left still. Whether like CNN covers progressives that way or not, that's just not something that, in my opinion,
They always do.
or a majority of progressive have changed.
Interesting. I would think the left would be a lot more anti-Second Amendment, but then again, I don't know. You
I
would know
mean,
the left better than me.
there is a lot of people that think that we should not have guns at all. But
you don't think you don't
it's
think
there's
it's
a I would say it's pretty like, I don't know. There's a lot of, I wouldn't say it's a majority to think we shouldn't have any at all. Because I mean, I think, there's reasons for people to have guns. But I think what we all want is a more responsible way to have firearms in our country,
And also, what we can all agree is have a strong leader, who just doesn't give in to dictators like Putin.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like it. It's hard to say. Like, I mean, you guys aren't in favor of involvement, but I'm curious to see what other nations would think if we don't get involved.
Yeah.
Or if
I
we
do
do involved
find-
in the implications of that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I do find it funny I'm getting
from-
attacked by the not me, but we're getting attacked by the neocons for like loving Russia because we don't want to see dead Americans.
Yeah, I said the same thing to my friends as well. And they're like, oh, you're like pro-Russia now. No, I'm not pro-Russia. I'm just pro-common sense.
This might be another issue, I think, where we agree, maybe supplying with weapons, but no troops.
No troops. Yeah, no troops.
I can't, as of right now, I can't commit. I have to think on it more, which is interesting because I'm not usually like the type to want to intervene with troops.
You
but,
waffler, just kidding.
I mean, well, with every
I'm kidding.
political decision, there's consequences.
It's a hell of a decision.
And so I think it's a lot of the times, I think a detriment of what we do in conversations is label somebody some way and, based on how we perceive them, make up their positions for them. In reality, everyone has completely individual perspectives.
So let me ask the question: does it get better or does it not? What does next week bring?
I would say it does not get better. It's a bad situation. I don't see. I would say go ahead and fill up your gas tank.
Yeah. My wife thinks I'm paranoid, but I told her we should buy some cans just in case shit hits the fan.
Yeah.
Some water and
Yeah, I mean, I'm just gonna fill up my car and just keep it filled up as I go along, but I'm not gonna take any cans just because I remember in North Carolina last time when there was a gas shortage due to a hack in a Russian pipeline, a ton of people came and siphoned out all the gas, so only like 5 people had it. Like my whole town didn't have it, but.
No, we can just move to Sujay's house. You got room?
Yeah, you guys are always welcome.
Yeah,
all right. Well,
I hope cooler heads prevail, but
we can. I just hope for de-escalation. That's what I hope. I hope Putin will stop.
I think it's gonna happen. So let's be hopeful.
You think
Yesterday
what?
they were talk. I think there'll be some sort of a de-escalation, and I think there'll be some sort of an agreement. Yeah.
All right.
Because let's find some stupid politics to talk about and not like nuclear war, because this is kind of uncool. So yeah, let's pray for lighter things.
For sure, that'd be awesome. All right, guys. Well,
all right, guys. I appreciate it. Have a good one, and I'll see you next time.
Take care.
Thanks.
See ya.